Hello and welcome. My name is Manu Balachandran and you're watching me on Capital Ideas, Forbes India's latest podcast series where we talk to business leaders, entrepreneurs and CEOs on their insights into the world of business, the Indian economy, what it takes to be successful, facing challenges and failures along the way. We hope you enjoy these conversations as much as we did when we spoke to them. We are also available across podcast platforms including Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Let's go speak to them. And welcome to Capital Ideas. My guest today is a man responsible for bringing you your daily tipple. As the CEO of Diageo India, the Indian arm of the British beverage alcohol company Diageo, Anand Kripalu is responsible for the spirit and beer manufacturers India play. The company manufactures, sells and distributes a portfolio of brands such as Johnnie Walker, Black and White, Signature, Royal Challenge, Smirnoff and Captain Morgan among many others. Anand joined Diageo India in May 2014, before which he spent over 3 decades selling everything from cosmetics to chocolates. Anand was with Unilever for 2 decades when he left as the managing director for its East Africa operations. He was also the president of Cadbury Kraft Mondelez India and South Asia and the managing director of Cadbury India Limited. In September, he took over as the chairman of Royal Challengers Bangalore, a team that hasn't quite had much success in the ongoing Indian Premier League, despite being favourites a few times. Welcome to Capital Ideas, Mr. Kripalu.
Thank you, Manu. Thank you for inviting me and having me over.
So let me begin by asking you, what do you reckon are RCB's chances this year in the IPL?
Well, fingers crossed. I think, who knows? I think we've had a better start this season compared to past seasons. But, this game is such that on the day, anyone can win and anyone can lose. Right? It's that kind of game. I think we certainly have the firepower in the team. I think it's a reasonably balanced team, as we have shown in some of the games when we have won even in crunch situations.
Right.
Normally, we would historically not often win in crunch situations. Right. Here we have. We've improved some of the departments that we felt were a bit weak in the past. Yeah.
Right.
So, fingers crossed, because it is partly about skill and partly the roll of the dice.
Okay.
So time will tell, right? But the team is up for it.
But RCB is an important part of the India operations for Diageo, right? And as a business leader with a boardroom perspective, you must have done your assessment on what has happened with the team and what where they've gone wrong. Some assessment on that.
No, yes, of course, we've done a lot of assessment, and based on that assessment, Manu, we have made significant changes this year, right? We have a completely new support team,
right?
Introduced the role of Director of Cricketing Operations. We have a new coach, and we have made certain specific player acquisitions as well to fill the gaps that we saw, right? And like I said, it's partly about skill and partly skill of the individual players. But even more, it's about how you bring about, in a short time period, a culture in the team that makes the whole more than the sum of the parts.
Right.
More than just the individual players themselves. And that's a big role for the support staff and the coaches. About how do you create that team culture in a short period, where the team is bigger than any individual, right? And sometimes it's more challenging when you have very big stars in your team.
Right.
So that has been the endeavor. And, we've made a lot of changes, and time will tell. Also, you see, all these changes don't always create impact immediately. They take a year or 2 or 3 to build. Right, given that the team only comes together for a couple of months,
right,
and then they go into different teams and different parts of the world. You don't have them with you all the time.
True.
To build that unity and team spirit. Right? So, but it's a very, very fascinating part of our business.
Right.
Like you started off saying, it's a skill that many of us have not grown up learning.
Absolutely.
right? We've learned how to manage brands and manage employees. Sometimes here you have to uh, manage sport and manage celebrities who are bigger than you will ever be. All right. And
That's
that's,
true.
I think, a very, very different skill altogether. But it's a fascinating part of the business and a very profitable part of the business, by the way.
Okay.
So, performance notwithstanding, it's a highly profitable part of our business. It's a 100% owned subsidiary
Right.
of the business. And we're very proud of owning this team.
And would it be? Is it very difficult? Bringing in a culture when, like you said, when the team actually comes for a very very short period of time. I mean, for 2 months. What really goes into developing that culture or imbibing that in really short time?
Well, I think this is where the skill of the coaches comes together about how do you build personal chemistry
Huh.
with the team, right? How do you get somebody like a Virat Kohli to also connect with and own some of the youngest players,
Right.
like Devdutt Pallikal, who has come onto the scene this time and
He's doing
performed
phenomenally well.
really well. Okay,
Right.
performed really well. He's a Bangalore boy. Okay, and he's been put to open the innings.
Right.
Right, a bold move by the team management, and that's not me because I don't decide who will play, what the order will be. You need cricketing experts to do that. So I think
Right.
the important thing of team ownership is you have to understand. It's like the chairman of a listed company. You have to understand your role is governance and appointing the management,
Right.
and then leaving the management to manage
Right.
and run the business on a day-to-day basis. It's a bit like here. My role is to put the whole stuff together, manage the marketing and the commercial side, appoint the right people, use them to decide who are the right players to buy, and then leave them to decide how they will play on the field and who will play on the field.
Right.
Right? Otherwise, you will end up meddling. And in India, everyone has a view of cricket with hindsight.
Right.
So everybody will come back after Virat Kohli gets out. Hey, he shouldn't have hit a shot like that.
Right.
Now he's Virat Kohli. You can't tell him how to bat.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But with hindsight, we all have a view, right? And not that we would have done much better if we had to hold the bat and go into the arena and play.
True.
So it's a very interesting facet, and I think it's taught me a few different things
Okay.
from just management of the business, which is management of celebrities and understanding where to step back,
Right.
and using your wisdom to appoint the right people to run the cricket team for you on a day-to-day basis.
Understood, sir. But were you always a person who was inclined towards sports, or were you more the studious kind growing up?
Well, I think I had a balance.
Okay.
I don't think I excelled in sport, but I played a fair amount.
Okay.
Right, whether it was a bit of hockey or a bit of football, a lot of table tennis, swimming, so squash later in life, dilly-dallying with golf. So I've done my bit of sport, but like all Indians, I think the game we follow more than other games is cricket.
Absolutely.
And therefore, the passion for cricket is a lot more. I would say the understanding of the game is not like an expert, but is a bit more. And therefore, this is a wonderful opportunity to convert that passion into a bit of a profession.
Absolutely. Now, let me just go back to the beginning, about where you grew up and when you went to college. I know you went to IIT Madras. But before that, I saw a bit where you studied in Lucknow, but it doesn't sound like, you are from Uttar Pradesh.
I'm a South Indian, actually. Bangalore is my hometown. So if there's any hometown, it's Bangalore. I speak Tamil at home with my parents and relatives. But I can reasonably understand and speak Kannada as well.
Okay.
But I never lived in South India.
Okay. And why was that?
Born in Delhi. My dad is an army guy.
Okay.
He's 94 and a half. He's an army man, and he was posted from Delhi to Udhampur to Srinagar to Guwahati to London. He faced the Chinese in Siliguri in the Chinese attack in 1962, faced the Pakistanis in 1971 when he was in the western sector in Udhampur. So he used to get transferred like that. And,
Right.
I started my schooling in London actually because he was posted there, then came back to Delhi, did schooling.
Right.
And then when he got transferred to Udhampur, I think, realized that my Delhi school didn't have boarding.
Right.
And I had an uncle of mine in the railways who lived in Lucknow and worked there.
Right.
So they said, listen, my uncle and grandmother were living there. And they said, okay, let's send him to Lucknow.
Okay.
And that's where I went. And that's where I finished my school from.
And that was La Martiniere in Lucknow.
That was La Martiniere, Lucknow. Yeah.
But you weren't inclined to moving to the armed forces life?
Well, actually, interestingly, my dad didn't want my brother and I to join the armed forces.
Okay.
And my mother was a big influence in what we did. And she was hell-bent that one son will become an engineer and the other one will become a doctor.
Okay.
And that's what happened.
Okay.
Then she was hell-bent after I finished engineering that I must go and do MBA at IIM. That's what happened. All right. So, so that's how it just evolved.
Right. And so you went to IIT Madras and you went to the IIMs and then straight away joined Unilever.
Yeah, I actually joined Ponds.
Okay.
Originally, I did my summer training in Hindustan Lever. I was in the final interview panel for Hindustan Lever. And then because of a quirk of fate in placement, you can only reject so many job offers that you've got.
Right.
And Ponds made an offer and I was yet to go for the final interview of Levers. And if I rejected Ponds and I didn't get the Levers final job, then I'd be stuck without anything.
Okay.
Right? Now, having said that, Ponds was the number one rated job on campus at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Right. I was the first person ever hired in sales and marketing for Ponds from IIM Calcutta. They only went to IIM Ahmedabad and they pretty much every year got the gold medalist from IIM Ahmedabad.
Interestingly, I must add here, one of the other person who had come on Capital Ideas was Mr. Tiger Tyagarajan. And
so he is a few years junior. He started with Ponds too.
He started with Ponds too. So he was telling me the other day about all that journey with Ponds, for a very long time. Then we used
to call him NVT because he's NV Tyagarajan, and then over time G became Tiger Tyagarajan.
Right.
But I still remember him from the Ponds time when he joined, again from IIM Ahmedabad.
Right.
So I joined Ponds, and then a couple of years after that, so I tell people often that IIM Calcutta was a life-changing experience because I discovered two things there. I discovered the wonderful world of brands.
Right.
And I said that's where I want to spend my life. And I also discovered my wife.
Okay.
We're batchmates from IIM Calcutta, and she's been a consumer marketeer through her entire life as well. Right.
Right.
And therefore, both of us are really consumer goods people.
Right.
So when I spent the first couple of years in Chennai, and then I wanted to get married, she was with Nestle in Delhi, and then I moved to Ponds. Was gracious enough. Like you followed your wife, so did I, and I moved to Delhi. We got married. I worked there with Ponds before Ponds was bought out by Unilever.
Right.
And that's how I came to Unilever.
Okay, and you spent about 22 years at Unilever, an incredibly long time.
It was a fascinating time, I must tell you. So one of the things I'd like to believe is that I grew up in a very happy but a very middle-class family, an honest government family, always struggled to make ends meet.
Okay.
There was never enough money after the 20th of the month in the house to buy anything.
Okay.
And these middle-class values have stood by me and guide me even today in how I decide to spend even the company's money.
Right.
Okay? I often tell people that your style of spending is not dictated by how much you have in the bank.
Right.
It's dictated by your mindset.
Right.
Okay. And Hindustan Lever was a middle-class company. In the way it approached things, in the sense of being understated, bit of frugality. You wouldn't waste, right? I still tell people that I still keep my shampoo bottle upside down to make sure that every drop comes out. right? I won't throw it in the dustbin before every drop comes out, and you'll squeeze your toothpaste tube till the absolute end, right? And Hindustan Lever was a bit like that, a bit of frugality and a bit of not wanting to waste,
Right.
right? And but the great thing about Hindustan Lever was that and it's a fabulous institution. You worked with some of the best people that you would ever work with, and
Right.
they took you as good quality raw material, but polished you
Right.
into a manager and a leader by giving you great responsibility and great exposure.
Absolutely.
I think every 2 years almost I change jobs in levers. And therefore the variety of jobs, both within my comfort zone and jobs that I didn't want to do outside my comfort zone, I think is what really set the foundation for who I've become.
Absolutely. And I must ask you here, and because you mentioned the bit about spending, and you said it's a function of the mindset. Not everybody perhaps will come from a middle class background. These days, entrepreneurs, flush with so much fun, go around spending. So how do you inculcate, these values into people, or can it be taught to people?
Well, I think a lot depends on how you're brought up, right? So both my sons and I have very, very different spending habits.
Right.
They will go to restaurants that I would still hesitate to go to, even if they're spending my money. Okay. And this is what I mean. So somebody said they've not grown up in a middle class home. All right. Now you have a values clash because you grew up in a middle class home, they did not. And you continue to spend the way you were brought up, and they spend the way they were brought up. And they will buy designer clothes and designer shoes, and you will not.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, in companies, I believe that a lot has to be done in leading by example. And when people see you using only one tissue paper in the toilet rather than using 5, right? Going out for a meal, not to a 5-star hotel, but a normal restaurant.
Absolutely.
Right. If you want to have a drink, you have a drink in the room rather than go and buy expensive alcohol in a restaurant.
Right.
If they see you doing things, they find it hard, even if they wanted to go and do that again themselves.
True.
Even though you're entitled to do it. So there's nothing in the rules that say I cannot go to a 5-star restaurant, entertain people, and order one of our good brands of whiskey.
Absolutely.
But it's the mindset that plays out. And that importantly comes when you're spending money of the company. One is on yourself, right? When you're traveling or training, but also when you're approving a capital proposal.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
When you're investing behind brands, right? It shapes your thinking.
Right.
And I think that people soon get it.
Right.
That this is how Anand thinks, and these are the choices he makes. And we are also expected to be sensible with the money that is at our disposal.
Absolutely.
So I think you can groom them to an extent. I don't know whether you will change their fundamental being itself.
Right.
Because that, I think, is more deeper rooted, Manu.
Right.
Yeah. And, with their own money, they may go and buy a fancy car. Right. And I think that's fine. That's personal choice.
Absolutely.
And I have no problem with that. Right. Because today, I have never taken a loan in my life.
Oh, okay.
Never. Because I have this thing, I have to live within my means.
Absolutely.
I'll not live on credit. I'll not take a housing loan, car loan, no loan. Right? Absolutely. I'll buy when I have that money in the bank. Right now, you think about it, people say you're mad. You're not leveraging yourself, you're going to get so much of money, etc. I said, yeah, but peace of mind. It's just the way I have been brought up.
True.
Now, the other young people who come, they may be frugal in the company, but they will live their lives on credit.
True.
Right? They will take loans. They'll buy a car based on next 2 years' income, but they'll buy it today. So I think it's just the way you are.
Absolutely. I think that's a lesson for people who are listening. The Diageo India head has never taken a loan. So, it's something to ponder over. Uh, but let me move on, to the part about when you started working out. Were there, moments when you started out? I know you were very clear about you loved brands, but were there moments early on in your professional lives when you doubted what you were doing, uncertain about yourselves?
I don't think I've ever doubted what I was doing. I've had ups and downs in my career. Yeah, I mean, it's a real career. It's not a dream career. Okay, it's a real career. So I've had my ups and downs. Um, I've always had self doubt on whether I was good enough to do the jobs I was given.
Right.
Al- Always.
Is it even now?
I always wondered. I think now I have grown out of that, but I'm ambitious for the business.
Right.
But for many years now, I've been less ambitious about myself.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I'll give you an example. I joined Cadbury in 2005.
Right.
The business was doing very well between 2005, 2008. 2003, 2004, there was this big infestation crisis of Cadbury where everyone said there are worms coming out of Cadbury chocolate and all that. And then we had some glorious years thereafter.
Right.
So I'd finished 2 years as managing director for the Indian subcontinent. And Sir John Sunderland, the global chairman of Cadbury, was visiting Mumbai. And he came and sat in my office. And as part of the conversation, he said, "So, Anand, what would you like to do next?" I thought about it for maybe 15, 20 seconds. There was a
Right.
pause. And I looked at him and said, "Sir John, nothing. I just want to continue doing what I'm doing and create a legacy in this job."
Right.
Taken aback. He must have expected that I'll ask for the moon.
Right.
Okay. 3 months later, they promoted me, made me president of Asia for Cadbury, and I was sitting in Bombay and overseeing mainland China, Southeast Asia, and everything else.
Right.
Okay. So I would say that things have come to me. I have this belief that you have to deserve before you desire.
Right.
So things have come to me, right? When people have felt that I deserve it, I think.
And
I've
how do you
not
make
always
yourself?
desired the next thing. Huh?
How do you make yourself more deserving of that? I mean, is it a lot of hard work? I mean, what really goes into?
So I work very hard.
Right.
I believe I'm a person of average intellect who works very hard.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not a super smart guy. Right?
Okay.
I've never thought I'm a super smart guy. I think I've been surrounded by very, very good and intelligent people very often, right? Who have helped me progress in my career, because ultimately you're as good as the team that you have.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I have, just have this belief that you have to play the best hand with the cards you've been dealt.
Right.
So every job I've been given, I have tried my best to excel in that job and leave a legacy in that job.
Right.
However small that job may be, I have to do the job in a way in which I must be remembered after I have left that job.
Right.
And I believe that your highest probability to get the next job is by excelling in your current job,
Right.
rather than looking at the next job all the time. So I'm a person who looks less at the next job, but focuses on the current job.
Right.
And does that to the best of my ability.
I think that's what happens with a lot of people. You live in the past or you look at the future, but you forget to live in the present. I mean, and focus on that. But
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm sure the fear of failure, I mean, that's something, a lot of people, it prompts them, from taking many risks. I'm sure you must have also had those, doubts about whether this something is going to fail, things like that. Or are you always optimistic about things?
So I'm very optimistic.
Okay.
I'm a glass half full person.
Okay.
In the most miserable of situations, I will see silver linings.
Okay.
Okay, in dark clouds, I will see the light at the end of those long tunnels.
Right.
Okay, and I believe it's really important as leaders to be optimistic, because if the captain of your ship thinks the ship is sinking and there's nothing they can do, how are you going to feel as a passenger on that ship?
Absolutely.
So, but I tend to live. I'm an optimist by nature. I look at the glass half full. I see opportunities, but I'm never overconfident.
Okay.
I always have butterflies in my stomach. And because I have those butterflies in my stomach, because I feel that I am not fully confident that I'll be able to do this. I try doubly hard. Huh?
Okay.
I try doubly hard to make it happen and make it work and make it succeed.
Right.
Because I have that little bit of that right level of constructive insecurity
Right.
in whatever I do. I
Is that
never am overconfident. I'm always a little insecure.
absolutely? Is that how you tided over that difficult phase with Cadbury's? Because there was a lot of hue and cry back then, when that had happened.
So first of all, I didn't handle that infestation phase. My
Okay.
predecessor, and they handled it really well.
Okay.
So when I joined, the business had tanked completely, but I think they had dealt with the problem. And the next 8 years were probably the best years in Cadbury's history.
Right. You had a
Right? We almost grew
campaign, I
at
believe.
25% per annum almost, top line and bottom line for 8 years.
Wow.
That's how the business grew, right?
But that must have been
And
difficult to do. I mean, especially when you come out of something like that and then to grow that phenomenally. You must have definitely brought in some changes there.
no, I like to believe I've brought in a lot of change. But the
Okay.
first thing is that, you have to believe that consumers, when they love brands, they also will forgive you sometimes.
Okay.
Not too often,
Right.
but they will forgive. And imagine you're talking about chocolate that goes into your mouth,
Right.
goes into your children's mouth. People boycotted the brand like you cannot imagine during that infestation crisis. It collapsed the business. I mean, who's going to feed their child a chocolate if there's a risk of a worm or a kida, as they will say, being inside it, right?
True.
There's no way. But if you own up to the problem, you make tangible changes, you go honestly to consumers and say, I fixed it, they will forgive you.
Right.
So I think that's what was done. I accepted that there could be a problem and it needs to be fixed. But then I made changes in how the business was run thereafter in
Okay.
Cadbury. And I really brought in the less is more philosophy.
Okay.
I think we killed more brands in my first year than we gave birth to.
Okay.
I killed some brands because they were too small or they were non-strategic. I reduced promotions like crazy. We were giving 20% extra, one ball free with Bonvita or something or the other all the time. And I called that brand discounting,
Okay.
stopped it, or reduced it drastically. Half the number of SKUs in the company, half the number of innovation projects we were working on because people were busy doing small things which will make no difference to the business.
Absolutely.
And I said, unless the size of the innovation in terms of ambition and potential is enough to move the meter of the business, then what are we doing? You will achieve your objectives for the year, but the business won't move at all. Right? So I killed all the projects that we believed were subscale.
That must have been a
And
tough.
I took a lot of the resources. Sorry?
Right. And I was asking, that must have been a tough decision to take. And
It was very tough because, you see, for people, if they're working on a project, it's like their baby.
Right.
It's personal.
Absolutely.
Right? And I had to take some very hard calls on this. And there were a lot of fights in the leadership team in my first year with people. People were very unhappy with me. There were lots of fights. But what I did is I redeployed the money that was released from promotions.
Right.
And the management time that was released from the extra SKUs and innovation and everything else, I redeployed that back onto the core brands of the business.
Right.
Cadbury Dairy.
Right.
5-Star, Cadbury Eclairs, Bonvita. And the business never looked back, Manu?
Absolutely. And how was that shift to Diageo? I mean, that coming to, I mean, it's a different, the other day I was watching, the show on Netflix, about India's billionaires. And, I mean, of course, there's reference to Mr. Malia, and they talk about the alcohol industry in general. And, there's this sort of, moral sort of taboo associated with alcohol in India. So how do you see that, how do you deal with that whole transition from, of course, chocolates to alcohol?
So it wasn't easy. Okay. Now, having said that, I must say that I enjoy my drink. I have no problem drinking. But the funny thing about our industry is There are a lot of people who will talk ill of the industry in the day,
Right.
will come home and have a drink in the evening.
Right.
It is fashionable to say bad things about the alcohol industry. And like I said, I think sometimes you get what you deserve.
Right.
So at the time when I was making this transition, I got cold feet in the beginning, saying,
Right.
"Well, I want to join the alcohol industry. It's a tainted industry."
Right.
People say alcohol, even though it's a consumer, they don't say you're working in the toothpaste industry or you're working in the detergent industry
Right.
or in the shampoo industry, but they say alcohol industry. Okay?
Right.
And I got cold feet saying, "Listen, will I get tainted?" I said, "I have never had to do wrong business practices in my life.
Right.
I'm not going to go and start doing that now." But then there was Diageo.
Right.
Diageo had completed the acquisition, change of control in July 4th, 2013.
Right.
Diageo had been awarded Britain's most admired company ahead of many of the British icons.
Right.
So it's possible for an alcohol business to be highly reputed, to be admired by everyone else. It doesn't have to be looked down on.
Absolutely.
And I said, Diageo will make sure that I have never asked to do anything wrong. And Diageo can be the leading light of what we can do to change the narrative of the alcohol industry in India. And I said, you know what? This could be my legacy.
Absolutely.
That I will leave behind an industry whose narrative is significantly different from the one I was walking into.
Right.
And it's with that, Manu, that I took the plunge. Right?
Okay.
It has been harder than I thought.
Right.
It's not been easy. We had to deal with a host of legacy issues, which were to do with the company, and a host of reputational issues that were to do with the industry at large.
Right.
I believe we have made a meaningful change in how business can be done and is done in this industry today.
Right.
Business is done very differently in this industry today.
I think that must be the reason you're seeing now a rapid increase in homegrown brands, coming through also. Definitely, I mean, competition for you, but I'm sure, it's a welcome move.
Oh, yeah. It is, see, earlier the barriers to entry were just so high that nobody
Right.
could come into this industry. The regulatory framework is a web. It is so complex and it is state-based. So for all the benefits of GST that are benefiting companies across the nation, we are still state-based and we have to pay import-export penal fees to move stock between state borders in India.
Right.
Okay? So you can't get the benefits of the GST kind of scale.
Right.
We're still a state-based model. Okay. So it is a web, and then it was hard to do business, hard to get licenses, hard to get approvals. I don't think it's still easy.
Okay.
But it has become more possible for people to come in, right, and wet their feet in this industry, as you see now some of the smaller brands beginning to do. Most of them come out of Goa because that is the most friendly state in terms of regulation.
Right.
And it's interesting that most of them come out of Goa, right?
Yeah.
Because it is very complex in other states still.
Right.
Listen, this story has not finished. This journey, I mean, this change is a journey, right?
Absolutely.
We haven't reached the destination. We are still on the train, right? But I really believe we have left the departure station, the departing station. We haven't arrived at the arrival station.
And how long or what does it take to get to that, the arrival part?
I mean, the reputational and narrative part, I think, will take very long. It's very deep-rooted in India. And sadly, you see, as manufacturers of alcohol, you have to be committed to ethical marketing of alcohol.
Absolutely.
But B, you have to also accept that there is a dark side to alcohol.
Right.
Alcohol does give problems. It does create social unrest. It does affect homes and livelihoods of people.
Right.
But what has been proven the world over is that the only solution is educating people
Hmm.
about responsible consumption of alcohol.
Right.
We spend 3 to 4 times of the CSR, the statutory amount that we're supposed to spend, right? We spend as a company, and a lot of it goes in saying don't drink and drive, for instance.
Right.
Right? And we've been running a don't drink and drive campaign for a long time. Okay.
Right.
Why do we do this? Because that is how we will educate people to drink and do the right thing, to drink responsibly, to use alcohol, not abuse alcohol. Yeah.
Right.
Enjoy. Right. We all know that for those who choose to drink, a bit of alcohol adds a lot of literally spirit to an occasion,
True.
whether it's a wedding or a celebration or a party. Right.
Absolutely.
It does for those who choose to drink. Right now, some people have a great time without drinking, and that's fine too.
Right.
But if you can keep it in that positive zone, then it's wonderful.
Absolutely.
When then people abuse alcohol,
Right.
like anything else, if you abuse sugar, it'll hurt you.
True.
Okay? Right? A lot of people say sugar is the new poison, huh?
True.
Right?
Absolutely.
So anything within limits, you can enjoy your life. And we believe that responsible consumption of alcohol can be part of an overall healthy and active lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we really believe that. But for that, we have to be ethical marketeers of alcohol.
Right. But how do you do that? I mean, say for instance, for governments anywhere, it is a big source of revenue, the alcohol industry. But at the same time, when elections happen, somebody or the other, even parties in power will say that, we look at prohibition. Certain states have done that. That puts you in a very dicey sort of situation also. How do you deal with that? I mean, it must be a very complex.
Well, it is a very complex thing because very often decisions could be based on votes rather than being based on economics. Okay.
Right.
Things like that happen in the real world. And we have seen decisions like that happening. Okay.
Right.
Now, I mean, there's enough data to show that it doesn't stop the consumption of alcohol. Really.
Right.
It just pushes it underground. Right, and makes it illegal.
Right.
The greatest examples of prohibition are from the US in the 30s. Okay. Where the richest people were those who were bootlegging alcohol into the US. And the guys who made all the money. So I think, and therefore it does become hard, and therefore a lot of work by the industry on how you shape thinking.
Right.
How do you create the balance between economics and social health?
Right.
And the governments need both. Right. But as long as there is irresponsible consumption of alcohol, so state governments very often will provide cheap alcohol called country liquor.
Right.
Right. At low rates of taxation. And actually, it's that country liquor that creates a lot of the negative image, because then people who are challenged economically start consuming those kinds of products. Right. And then they don't consume responsibly. And that creates social problems, economic problems, right? And then you hear negative narratives that then damage the larger reputation of the industry.
Right.
Correct?
Absolutely.
So governments now, the 4 southern states, for instance, banned country liquor decades ago.
Right.
And said you have to drink quality brands. And I think that's a move that governments can take, where you can have the economic benefits too and start trying to contain the negative side of alcohol. And I would expect governments who want the economic benefits, which is very significant, and in today's GST regime, it is one of the biggest source of revenue that the state controls, right, Manu?
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Revenue alcohol. But then I would expect the state governments also to spend on education for responsible consumption of alcohol. Help partner the industry to change the narrative, because listen, we as a company pay more than 20,000 crores of taxes a year.
Wow.
As a company, I'm saying this is Diageo India, United Spirits Limited. States make serious revenue from alcobev.
Right.
Through spirits, through beer, through wine, through country liquor, and so on and so forth. Using a fraction of that, to ensure that the industry remains healthy, the narrative of the category remains at least neutral, if not positive,
Right.
that they can sustain the economic stream as well.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think there's a real opportunity and a recognition that prohibition doesn't work.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, making fermenting grain or fermenting something and making alcohol can be done in your backyard.
True.
At the end of
I
the day.
think during the lockdown, a lot of people were trying to do that.
I'm sure people are trying to do that, right? People the world over, and Indians are ace at jugaad. Indians are not going to be stopped from finding innovative solutions to satisfy their needs.
Right. But has the industry come back to normal now after that 2 months of complete lockdown?
So I would not say fully back to normal. See, the reality is that about a quarter of our industry is the on-trade.
Right.
Bars, restaurants, hotels, where people consume there on the premises of those establishments.
Right.
75% is where you go and buy a bottle and take it home.
Right.
The off-trade has come back fully.
Okay.
The on-trade now has started opening, and there have been some positive moves recently. I saw the Delhi Chief Minister making some positive moves about, allowing bars and restaurants to stay open till late at night.
Right.
And I think everywhere bars are beginning to open.
Right.
Traffic footfalls are still a little low, but they're picking up. And we are doing a lot, by the way, as a company.
Okay.
To help some of these bars and restaurants get back on their feet.
Right.
Provide a safe environment so that consumers can come back. So I think we've got to give it a few more months, but I'm hopeful that as we enter the festive season and winter,
right,
that more and more bars will open and people will get a bit more comfortable. Initially you'll take baby steps to going out.
Right.
And then slowly you'll build confidence. And I hope people take the basic precautions of social distancing and wearing a mask and stuff like that. But slowly you build more comfort and confidence that it's okay to go out and you'll be safe.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping that with the onset of the festive season and winter, that I don't know whether we'll get back to normal or not. That's hard to say. But I think it will improve significantly as far as the on-trade is concerned.
Right. But, COVID has brought about a lot of disruptions and across different industries. What do you think will happen to the alcohol bev industry? There was talk about, home delivery of alcohol in between. So you think the whole consumption pattern will change or the way we consume will change?
So I think something will change. How permanent it is, I'm not sure. Right. Now, obviously, we had the biggest disruption of 46 days of prohibition in India effectively when the lockdown happened, right? Because alcohol was not included in the essential items.
Right.
I think alcohol tends to be somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Not essential, not discretionary, probably at the midpoint somewhere, right, is what alcohol is. But in our case, the government took a call to stop sale of alcohol. Many countries in the world, they continue to allow the sale of alcohol.
Right.
Okay. So obviously we had a complete lockdown of our factories and everything else. And that was a big disruption for the business. And through the end of March, April, and the early part of May,
that
actually happened. But I think the longer benefits that we have to see and how they play out, depending on how long this pandemic will stay,
right,
at least till a vaccine is found, is our categories is at the center of socializing.
Right.
So if you're in a personal care category or hygiene category or buying and using the product on your own, that's fine. Our category gets consumed more often than not when you are at the center of socializing. When 4 friends together. When there's a wedding happening and, a big fat Indian wedding with lots of consumption, right? Or a company that's achieved its target or a team that is celebrating in a banquet. Now, suddenly that has changed for the moment,
right?
At least, okay, and that's a fundamental change, right? Of how our category shows up and where our category shows up. So those occasions now are gone.
Right.
Now, people are compensating it with different kinds of occasions, either drinking at home within the family, or very close friends or close relatives, right? And doing that kind of stuff. I mean, in my view, the one thing that I feel is alcohol as a category has been resilient everywhere in the world across decades.
Right.
The category has high stickiness with consumers. And I'd like to believe that it will come back.
Okay.
Right? And right, there'll be more of, if on premise is not there, there'll be home premise, where people start making cocktails and fancy drinks at home and say, let me experiment. Like, a lot of people have been experimenting with cuisines and food during the lockdowns.
Absolutely.
Because, they can't go out to eat.
Right.
Right. So let's experiment and create some excitement in the home. I think so too for alcohol. Right. Earlier you would go out and have a nice cocktail, say, now let me make it at home, and soon you'll discover that it costs a fraction of going and having it outside. Right. If you have it. Okay.
Right.
So I think people will find, I mean, humans will find ways to socialize, to entertain themselves, and to feel good.
Right.
And what is life without a bit of indulgence? Right? You cannot be so clinical in your existence, so sanitized in your existence. It can get boring. You need a bit of spice. Everybody needs some release of some kind, right? And I believe we are a category that will then cater to certain different things.
Right.
We've also seen a shift, a bit of shift from beer to spirits.
Right.
During the period, beer is bulky, it's tough to carry home. The on-trade is where beer is consumed. The on-trades have been shut. So there's been some shift towards spirits. And to your point, home delivery, which has been announced in 6-7 states, still very small. Right? I hope becomes national in all states, because it enables 3-4 things. It enables, obviously, online ordering and home delivery.
Right.
Home delivery means you don't need to go to the store. Therefore, social distancing is taken care of. You can make online payments, and therefore you don't need to physically exchange cash. You can have people like women who are uncomfortable going to a liquor store in India for all the known reasons, sitting and browsing on their screen and choosing what they would like to consume and ordering that, and knowing that you can do that in the safety of your home, and that will get delivered home. And data and e-commerce gives you the biggest control of who's buying, what's their profile, what's their age, are they underage, right? And how much are they consuming? Absolutely. It gives you data that you do not have. So actually, for the regulators, it actually gives you a far better grip on the industry and what's happening. Absolutely. From the point of view of governance of the industry. True. So I think there are lots of benefits, Manu, in terms of what home delivery can give. But it's not easy, because you have licensed retailers who have paid big license fees to keep their stores open. Right. And therefore, our belief is that doing an Amazon where you bypass the retailer will not work in Alcobev. The retailer of alcohol has to be part of the solution. Right? You have to empower him or her to be part of the whole e-commerce home delivery solution and platform. And that's what's happening actually in the few states where currently it's going, but it's still small and it still needs to be nurtured for it to become a key contributor to our sales and to state revenues.
But will we see, things like Bloody Mary being bottled, and being sold, or Cosmopolitan, things like that, than just raw spirit?
Well, in the US, you can order a cocktail and they'll deliver it home to you.
Right.
Okay. Now, we haven't started doing that, though some bars have tried a few things. But, there's a regulatory web around it in many, many places in India, which makes it complicated. Right. So I think we're doing the next best thing. Our brand ambassadors, who are really these expert mixologists who create magic with some of our outstanding brands, right? By adding all kinds of ingredients, right? People can create magic with spirits and ingredients. True. They are doing a lot of online education of what you can do at home with ingredients that very often you will have at home. Right. And teach you how to do some of this stuff. So whether we will bottle a ready-made RTD or ready-to-drink kind of cocktail or not, I don't know. But the next best thing is DIY. Do it yourself, and we'll teach you. And we'll teach you how.
Right. I think on that note, we're well past about 15 minutes. So on that note, I would like to express a sincere gratitude for joining us from your busy schedule. I know you are in Dubai in between all of this, IPL thing, just taking us through your remarkable journey. So we wish you the best with Diageo and in staying safe during these turbulent times. Thank you, Mr. Kripalu, for joining us.
You too, Manu. Thank you for having me, and stay safe as well.
Absolutely. I must add here, my father-in-law is from the armed forces. He was, in fact, he retired as the commander-in-chief of the training command here in Makery Circle.
Oh.
He was there for about 3 years as the CNC, Air Marshal SRK Nair. So that's why.
Air Force, Air Marshal SRK Nair.
Yeah, he was the CNC training command, long tenure, and just retired.
Commander-in-chief for the for the training command. Wow.
That's at Makery Circle.
Wow. Yeah. So you'll relate to some of the things I've said.
Absolutely, yes. Right. So thank you so much once again for joining us. Good luck with IPL.
Thank you. We need it.
All the best.
We need it. I can tell you.
I'm Bangalorean now, so RCB.
You're a Bangalorean now, and I can tell you, our cricket performance sometimes gives me more stress than our business performance.
All the best with that.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Bye.